Horror games are a medium for us to experience our deepest, darkest fears, battling against all odds, facing horrific things like zombies, aliens, zombie aliens, and so many more unspeakable atrocities. But recently, as technology improves, horror games have begun to evolve. Developers gain the ability to craft more than just scary monsters or dark environments. They've learned to craft experiences that are more unsettling and target deeper fears of human emotion. With this, many new games carry meanings that go a step further to explore the monsters that live within us. Loneliness, depression, jealousy, grief, guilt. It goes without saying that there were, of course, games that focused on these emotions. However, the strategies to do so were creative. Let's look at some gameplay from an adventure game, first released in 1977 with some horror aspects. Chills. Or at least that was the idea. Early games like Zork relied heavily on imagination. With limited graphics and simple mechanics, much of the fear came from the player filling in the blanks themselves. The navigation of landscapes, the darkness, the uncertainty of what might be waiting around the next corner or behind that oddly shaped tree northeast of your location. But these limitations also meant that early games struggled to explore the human mind in a meaningful way. Complex emotions, fractured perceptions, and psychological struggles were difficult to convey through simple text prompts and rudimentary visuals. So, for a long time, these kinds of stories and explorations lived elsewhere. Films and television stepped in to explore disturbed minds. Psychological breakdowns,
Right.
I was trying to be nice.
Wacko.
I like your friends.
I know it.
and the darker corners of human thought.
Wendy, baby, I think you hurt my head real bad.
While some films and shows did a particularly great job in showing varying forms of mental illness, a main problem is that, in general, these portrayals treated mental illness as something frightening. Characters labeled as insane or crazy, or as shown in an earlier clip from A Woman Under the Influence, wacko. Video games are guilty of this too, of course, where these characters are often portrayed as violent, unstable, or beyond redemption because they're crazy. In doing so, the media has sometimes reinforced the idea that struggling psychologically makes someone dangerous or broken. Something to note here that may be scarier than anything is how even family entertainment has relied on similar language. In several classic animated films produced by the small up-and-coming studio known as Disney, characters are repeatedly described as crazy, mad, or nutty.
Why is this so important?
Pudge controls the weather. You're crazy.
These labels are often used to isolate characters and mark them as strange, dangerous, or socially inferior. As researchers Andrea Lawson and Gregory Fouts point out in their study on mental illness, in Disney animated films specifically, this kind of language historically functions to segregate and alienate characters who behave differently. Because these films target younger audiences, this disparagement begins early, shaping how children view people who act differently. Over time, the fear surrounding mental illness becomes so normalized that we hardly notice the isolation it creates. As awareness and research around mental health has grown, some horror games have begun attempting something different. Rather than portraying mental illness as something monstrous or something to fear, these games now place the player in a position to see the world through the eyes of someone living with these struggles. How can they do this? Through clever use of sound design, environmental storytelling, and gameplay mechanics. One of the most influential examples of this shift came in 2001. Unlike many horror games of its time, Silent Hill 2 doesn't rely primarily on jump scares or the run and gun 'em action that's seen in big names like Resident Evil. Instead, it builds a slow, oppressive atmosphere where the true horror is psychological. The fog covered town, the soundtrack that hauntingly plays in the background, and the disturbing creature designs all reflect something deeper happening within the protagonist, James himself. The display of mental illness in Silent Hill 2 is a unique one, and as pointed out by Licardi in his Diagnosing the Genre series, one of its remarkable achievements is its deliberate avoidance of heavy-handed reliance on mental illness as a storytelling device. In doing so, the game skillfully avoids the harmful and inaccurate trope of portraying mentally ill individuals as inherently violent. What Licardi is pointing out here is that James, a male protagonist who isn't the typical big, stoic, invincible hero, has vulnerabilities, emotions, and grief. This subversion of masculine expectations allows us to connect with James' humanity and his psychological struggles, showing that trauma and weakness are part of the human experience, not something that automatically makes someone dangerous. In the game, we are tasked with searching for James' wife, Mary, who has supposedly written him a letter from the town of Silent Hill, inviting him to join her there. In case you haven't played the game or haven't heard anything about it by some remarkable feat, Mary died years prior. As we play through the story, it becomes clear that the monsters and environments James encounters are not entirely random. The grotesque, lumbering creatures, like the Pyramid Head, embody his guilt and repressed desire for punishment, feeling as though he deserves it for what he did, while the twisted, decaying streets reflect his inner confusion, fear, and isolation. Even more seemingly mundane things, from blood-stained walls to abandoned houses, seem filled with personal, deeper meaning, making the town itself feel like a projection of James' fractured mind. We come to realize that every corner of Silent Hill is shaped by his psychological state, forcing us to confront his trauma as we navigate the environment. This focus on an internal experience over external spectacle lays the groundwork for later horror games that would push even further, crafting immersive simulations of mental states rather than relying on traditional monsters alone. This idea of experiencing the world through a character's fractured perception becomes the central design philosophy of
the gate. It's opening.
Who is it?
It's coming. That song again.
Is it?
It's Hella.
Yes, the source of the darkness. It's coming. This is your moment.
I'm sorry. I can't watch this.
What are you doing? You're showing weakness. You're not a warrior. You're a disgrace.
From the very beginning of the game, Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, players are placed inside the mind of its protagonist, Senua. As she travels through a dark and hostile world inspired by Norse mythology, she is constantly accompanied by voices, whispers, arguments, doubts, and encouragements that echo around the player's head. Her journey is driven by a single goal: to descend into hell and save the soul of her sacrificed lover, Dillian. Throughout development, the game's creators worked closely with neuroscientists and individuals who experience psychosis in order to portray these symptoms as accurately as possible.
Psychosis is a descriptive term, and it refers to having a loss of contact with objective reality. So it's characterized by two main sets of symptoms. One of them is hallucinations, where somebody experiences perceptions when there is no actual objective thing out there to perceive.
You're already dead. Who are you?
And the other is delusions, where somebody comes to very often bizarre, unpleasant, frightening beliefs when there's no good evidence in favor of them.
There's no doubt about it. The source of the darkness is in Helheim. And the goddess Hela holds his soul there.
The result is something unusual for a horror game. As Andre Ney argues in Marginalization and Intersectionality, the game strives to foster empathy by placing players directly inside Senua's subjective experience. Unlike many horror games that rely on external threats to create fear, Hellblade makes the internal experience itself the source of tension and horror.
Do your gods answer your prayers, Senua? I asked the gods for mercy, all of them, even theirs. None answered. In the end, I set myself free. Defy the gods, Senua! Find your own path, like I find mine!
My gods abandoned me! I am alone.
Through binaural audio, shifting environments, and puzzles built around pattern recognition and perception, the game simulates the disorientation and uncertainty that can accompany psychological distress from something like psychosis. As a player, you are navigating the uncertainties of life alongside her. Hellblade addresses stigma and marginalization by framing Senua's struggle as a real, possible human experience, rather than a source of fear or mockery. The game presents her psychosis without sensationalizing it. Instead, players witness the social, cultural, and personal barriers she faces. This includes being an outcast from her village and being labeled as a hostess of darkness. This highlights how individuals with mental health conditions are often misunderstood, dismissed entirely, and isolated from society. In doing so, the game challenges traditional horror tropes and reframes psychological distress as something to experience and understand, rather than something to fear in others. Video games are uniquely positioned to be part of that change. Unlike films or books that can still convey a great message, games can place us in control of someone else's perspective, allowing us to engage with experiences we might never otherwise understand. When developers take that responsibility seriously, the result can be something far more powerful than simple horror. H.P. Lovecraft once wrote that the oldest and strongest kind of fear is the fear of the unknown. For much of modern media history, mental illness has occupied that space of the unknown. When something isn't understood, it's easy to frame it as frightening, unstable, or dangerous. And for a long time, that's exactly how many stories chose to portray it. As research into mental health continues to grow, that unknown slowly begins to disappear. What once seemed mysterious or frightening becomes something more human, something we can begin to recognize, empathize with, and ultimately understand. And as that understanding improves, the way we tell stories about them continues to evolve as well. With new games continuing to explore these ideas and uncover the fog that lays around it, I'm excited to see where the medium goes next. Titles like Hellblade: Senua's Saga shows that developers are still pushing forward, working with researchers and people with lived experience to tell these stories more thoughtfully.